There we go. To serve or to be served, which is better? More than 2,000 years ago, a missionary arrived on our planet from the most advanced civilization in the universe. Why did Jesus come here? If you think 2020 was bad, and it was, imagine what life was like when Jesus come here. He didn't have Wi-Fi in his bedroom. No cell phone, no laptop, no television, no electricity, no hot shower, not even a flush toilet. Next. Jesus and his family had to evacuate from their home, not because of an approaching fire, but because somebody threatened his life. They didn't just jump in the car and drive down the road and spend the night in a nearby hotel. Instead, they rode on the backs of the previous one. Oh, wait. Yeah, that one there. That's good. Instead, they rode on their backs of animals for many days across hundreds of miles of inhospitable terrain to a land filled with people whose language they didn't even speak. Next. Jesus didn't come here to get a college degree and a high-paying job and to live in a fancy home. He didn't come here to be a king and to rule from a huge palace. He didn't come here to lead an army and establish the Israeli empire. Instead, he grew up in poverty in a country brutally ruled by foreigners. He worked with his hands as a humble carpenter. He never sought a position of authority in a government or non-government organization. His friends were poor. He probably never dated, certainly never got married and had children. Instead, he was despised and rejected by the leaders and influencers of his society. So why did Jesus come here? Next. Contrary to the expectations and aspirations of his followers, Jesus did not come to serve. Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve. His followers were stunned and confused. Like you and me today, they were focused on their own self-interests, and they aspired to a life of prosperity, comfort, and convenience. Don't we all? But they wanted more than that. They wanted revenge against their Roman rulers, and they strived with each other to obtain the highest position in the coming kingdom. Well, Jesus didn't come here to tell us what to do. He gave us advice, lots of advice that we could either accept or reject, and he had a revolutionary message. Next. He said, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. This was a rebuke to human pride, self-centeredness, and a desire for superiority that many of us have. And it's not what his followers wanted to hear, and it's not what many of us want to hear today. Most of us, if not all of us, aspire to obtain an influential job and to get rich and to acquire material possessions. Some of us want to become famous, to rule over others. And in order to obtain our goals, some of us are willing to cheat, steal, and take advantage of others. Next. Dismayed by the death of their leader and elated by his subsequent resurrection, Jesus' followers realized that they would be happier if they followed Jesus' example. The disciple James said, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom." Next. Now, service isn't something that just religious organizations encourage their members to engage in. It's also what our governments, secular governments, use in order to recruit people to serve the country or to serve in the military. I want you for the U.S. Army. Next. Way back in 1962, we had a president. What was his name? John Kennedy, you guys had good history teachers. And during his inauguration speech, he said, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Now, that may seem a little self-serving to just serve our country, but John Kennedy actually had a broader vision in mind. Next. He said, "My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man." Next. To those peoples in the huts and villages across the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves. That could have been a sermon in church. Next. The disciple Peter said, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others." Next. So how do we learn to serve others? The Apostle Paul said, "So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip or train his people for works of service." We are fortunate as Adventists. We have an educational system in which we train young people. And what better way for people to learn how to serve others than to be trained in our educational system? This is a school in Central Valley Christian Academy, somewhere in Central Valley. I can't remember which town. Next. So I am a professor of biology at Pacific Union College, and it's a wonderful campus, and we're a faith community. Next. And so we believe in providing opportunities for students to serve, go out in communities and serve others. Next. And this is Fabio Maia. He was our former missions director. He's now actually retired at a relatively young age, and he's living in Portugal, but he's still helping us with our missions service by organizing mission trips. And I'm fortunate because I went on 5, 6, 7. I've been on 8 mission trips with him. And he was a mentor for me in many ways. And I learned a lot about his methods of organizing mission trips and leading out. And so I would normally take a biology class with me on those trips. So I'm going to talk about different ways in which Pacific Union College provides opportunities for students to engage in community service. Next. The first thing we have is homeless ministries close to home. Next. For more than 4 years, this gentleman here, just about every Sabbath afternoon, would take a group of students with him out to Clear Lake, and they would minister to the homeless people there. Next. And I joined him on several occasions, and we would provide food, clothing, pet food, medicine, and sometimes money to these people that live there. Next. And I used to think that these homeless people were just lazy, they didn't want to work, and they just wanted handouts, and I was given permission to take this photo as long as I didn't post it on social media. I told them I wanted to advocate for them, and they said, "Sure, go ahead." But what I quickly learned is that these people have challenges. Life has not been good to them, and there's a small percentage of people in this world that just struggle to take care of themselves, and homelessness is also complex. Most of them obviously suffered from mental health challenges and addictions, which are mental health issues. But some of them, they got laid off from their jobs and couldn't afford rent and were evicted from their apartments. Some of them are permanently homeless, but some of them are only temporarily. And next. And they're people that are basically like the Samaritans. They're kind of frowned upon by society. Nobody wants to be with them. And I discovered the ones I spoke with, they were rather nice and friendly and very humble and eager to chat with me. And I do realize there are some that are not particularly safe people to be around. But I learned that these are people that, they need our help. And here we are in Napa, providing warm clothing for this last winter, which was very brutal. And when we go to visit them, we pray with them afterwards, and we just want to be there for them and help them out. Next. Then we have short-term mission trips. Next. So when we go on these trips, we don't stay in fancy hotels. We try to make the trips affordable. So here we have students sleeping in a boat on the Amazon River. Next. And here we have students sleeping in a classroom, in a school, a primary school in Fiji. Next. And when we go on these trips, we meet lots of children. They're wonderful kids, and they love our students. Next. They view our students as role models. Our students are who they want to be. And this is a tremendous opportunity for our students. And our students learn a lesson. Next. Because when they go on these trips, they realize that around the world there are millions, if not billions, of young people who would just love to attend Pacific Union College, to attend the classes that they attend, to live in the dorms that they live in and often complain about, and to eat the food in the cafeteria that, unfortunately, they often complain about. So it helps them appreciate what they have more and appreciate the needs of others around the world. Next. So this is a soccer match between USA and Brazil. I can't remember who won. It was pouring rain. They're barefoot there. But it didn't matter who won. They were just having fun. They couldn't even talk to each other. English and Portuguese, and they were just having fun together. And that's the way it should be, you know. There's a universal language of love. Next. So we often have, we always have Vacation Bible School in which our students lead out and Bible stories and songs. Next. So that was in Brazil. That's in the Amazonia, Brazil. This is in Kenya. Next. And we try to do a lot of different things when we go on these mission trips. We try to make them kind of holistic. There's a lot of people that are careless with their trash, and a lot of it winds up in the oceans, floating around the world. This is a beautiful island in Fiji where trash often washes up on the beaches. Next. So we send the kids out in teams, competing with each other to see which team could collect the most garbage. Next. So here's the winning team. Next. And they're the losers and the winners. They're all happy. They're just having a good time together, and they just love it when we go and visit the island. I just got back from a trip there in March, and PUC's been going there for about 10 years. That school is actually, we've had student missionaries, we'll talk about that a bit later, but the kids just love it when we visit. And so we like to go back to these places and visit them and work with the community. Next. So one of the things I realized when I went snorkeling with my students is a lot of the kids wanted to go swimming with us, and they didn't have mask, fins, and snorkels. So we raised some money, and we took 10 sets of snorkeling gear. These are the boys here, and we took them swimming. Next. These are the girls here. For some reason, the school master had them go separately with us. Next. So we took them out snorkeling, and I have a movie, a video that I posted online of this. Next. And they're just having a great time. So now these children have their own, the school has a set of, they have 10 sets of snorkeling gear. And in March, we brought another 10 sets for them. So that way the kids can explore their island more and learn skills that are important for them when they become older and need to provide fish for their family because they need inexpensive food. Next. One of the things I noticed in some of these schools that we visited, they don't have much in the way of reading books. So this is a school with over 700 children, and this is their library, and those are, if you look at them, they're mostly textbooks. They're almost all textbooks. Next. So I remember when I was growing up, I grew up in Maryland, and the library was larger than this room here. And we had thousands of books. I remember the first week, I think I read every book on snakes. And, well, maybe I tried to read them. But anyway, we encourage our students to bring along books, you know, good, easy reading books for the children. So next. So that they could learn more and dream about a better life and expand their imagination. Next. This is a school in Kenya with about 150 young Maasai ladies. The ladies are in a separate school. They feel it's safer for them, and they actually live there in the school because it's not safe to walk long distances there because there are predatory animals there. So these young ladies never got to go to school, secondary school, until the year 2019. Next. So here we are. This is a mission trip a couple years ago, visiting with the teachers there, and we asked them what their needs were, and they mentioned several items, and one of them they mentioned was computers. Next. So last year we we brought 18 laptop computers and a computer projector for the school there. There was a teacher there who had his own laptop, so he knew how to use it in the programs. The other teachers didn't really. Next. And so we basically spent a day tutoring the teachers on how to use the equipment. And these girls, for example, they lost a year of school even after they started in 2019 because of the pandemic. They couldn't have online teaching. Next. So they set up a lab. So 8 of the laptops went to the teachers so they could incorporate computers into their education. And then 10 of the computers went for a lab. So the girls get to learn computer skills that could help them find a job, support their families, and integrate with the world in the 21st century. We felt really, really good about that. Next. So when we went to Fiji in March, we took along 5 laptops. The school only has like 40-some students. So this is something we want to do in all our future mission trips, is try to provide laptops for these young children so they could learn computer skills that they otherwise wouldn't be able to learn because they just simply don't have that access to technology where they live. Next. During this last trip in Fiji, we brought along a bunch of solar panels. I think they were purchased. The purchase was done on the main island there. So we took them to this school. This is a small island with about 500 people, and there's only one school there, and it happens to be a Seventh-day Adventist school. And so we hired this electrician to install these on 3 of the buildings, and then we wired a 4th building to provide light. Now, they actually had some solar panels, but they hadn't been working for several years, and so they were just really grateful to. And we hadn't been there since 2019 because of the pandemic. So they were really grateful to have electricity once again on the campus. Next. We do engage in a lot of construction projects. This is in Amazonian Brazil, where a tree was cut down. Next. And the Brazilians are amazing. They have these big, like 5-6 foot long chainsaws, and they just perfectly cut these boards out there in the rainforest. Here we got a couple of students that are carrying these perfectly cut boards nearly a mile walking through the rainforest. They select certain species of trees, and so sometimes they have to walk a long ways into the rainforest to find them. Both of these students were stung by a scorpion, and their hand was swollen, and so some species of scorpions are deadly, and we had no idea what species stung them, and so we prayed for them, and by morning, their hands were well. And that was good because we were about a 17-hour boat journey from Manaus and about maybe 8 or 9 hours from another town called Manacapuro that would have had medical care. So praise the Lord, nothing happened to them. Next. So here are some construction supplies that are brought in there by boat. Next. And we have to work together as a team. It works better when we have a team. Not everybody just doing their own thing. Next. Although sometimes we do have to carry things by ourselves. But I want you to notice the smile on this young lady's face. Next. And look at the smile on this young gentleman's face. Now, college students are notorious for getting into mischief during spring break, but not these students. They invest time and money traveling to a distant part of the world where they're having to rough it. They're not used to that kind of thing. Just to make life better for somebody other than themselves. And I find that inspirational. I mean, I'm really proud of these students that they actually spend money doing that sort of thing. Next. So this is a clinic that we were building in a remote community in the Amazon. Next. This is a new home for teachers on Mana Island in Fiji. Next. This is the foundation of a 3rd building that was being built in this girls' secondary school there in Kenya. The money was actually donated by tourists. There's a nearby national park, and they see the communities there and say, hey, what can we do to help these people? And so we stay in a resort there that's owned by an Adventist couple. The gentleman's a construction worker, and his wife is a nurse. And so they often host churches and schools for mission trips. And so he gets contracted to build these schools in the region. And I felt wonderful that day. I just loved being there. I'm actually with the hat on there in the middle. Next. This is a new clinic that we worked on last year. So they have a clinic there. This is a new building. They needed to expand. They needed to grow. Next. Here we are painting. This is a non-denominational Bible training center for Bible workers. Next. And here's a couple of gals painting inside that new school building that we had built, helped build the foundation of a few years before. Next. We also do a lot of healthcare. On the left, we have a nursing professor, a nursing student. On the right, we have a couple of parents. One is a physician, the other is a nurse. Next. And during our trip last year to Kenya, the nursing professor on the left and the nursing student on the right, they delivered like 5 babies, and 2 of them were named after them. So we have Nicolette and Nicolette and Christy there. This is pretty cool. Next. So in our most recent trip to Fiji, we've been doing this in Fiji for a while. This is a health clinic. We now have a program in which our nursing students, they get academic credit in a course called Community Health. We had 12 nursing students and 3 non-nursing students that were helping out here. And so we invite the whole community to come and get checked up. We had a team of physicians. Unfortunately, we only had 1 dentist on that trip. A previous trip I was on, we had 2 dentists. Next. And so they get their health checked by our students. We even had a surgery going on there. Some of the patients, if there was an emergency, they were evacuated to another island where there's a hospital. Next. This is a dental clinic in Brazil. These aren't real clinics. These are makeshift clinics in buildings. And so this is a good opportunity for our students who want to become physicians and dentists to spend some time learning how actual physicians and dentists work in rural conditions. Good opportunity for them. And it could be helpful to them when they're applying for medical school or dental school or nursing. Next. This is a dental clinic. It's not a real clinic in Fiji. So dental students working with dentists in Fiji. Next. In the Amazon, people often drink water directly out of the river, which would probably kill most of us, and it actually kills a lot of, they have a high infant mortality rate, and the ones that do survive have a very strong immune system. So we got these filters that cost $35 each, and we drill holes in those little trash bins. Next. And we attach the filters to them, and you could dip water out of the river, drink the water next through the filter, and so we hand them out to communities along the river. We've also provided health fairs. We didn't have healthcare workers actually with us on this particular, in this village. This is a village in Brazil where we had various tables where the villagers came and we took biometric measurements and of them, and we plugged them into a computer in Portuguese, which was a bit of a challenge because I was the one that was doing it. And then it would actually calculate what their expected longevity is, and it would give suggestions for how they could live happier, healthier, and longer lives. Next. We also have opportunities for student missionaries. Next. So these are students that go out, typically spending a summer or a quarter or hopefully the full school year, serving a community somewhere. Now, some of them stay here in the U.S. I think they call it task force, or they used to. I'm not sure what they call it nowadays, but we call them student missionaries when they go abroad. So these are 3 students from PUC in Fiji that spent a year teaching in the little Adventist school there. Next. And here's a student missionary in her classroom. Next. And they're the students. Good opportunity for these students of ours. Next. And here's a student missionary speaking in church in Fiji. So they're engaged with the local community, ministering to them. Next. So how did I get involved in all of this? Well, I could tell you when I was a freshman in college, one of the first couple of months, we had a Vespers in which there was a married couple. And they showed slides of their experiences that they had on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. And that did it for me. I was so enchanted by their story that I wanted to do it. So I became a student missionary on an island in Micronesia. called Kosrai, and I learned a lot during that trip. It was a life-altering experience. I had no electricity. I had running water, but it was cold, and so I had cold showers for 9 months, and I didn't know anybody. We didn't have a phone on the island, so the only way I could communicate was by mail, which would take like 2 to 4 weeks to crisscross the ocean. A lot of you would remember those days. And I was lonely. And those church members became my family. I remember the day I left, I cried. So I was teaching in a little primary school there, grades 4 through 11. And next, I wanted more of that. So I joined Peace Corps. And I worked as a biologist in a museum in Paraguay, training Paraguayan biologists. And I met this young lady in a tiny Adventist church with like four families in it, and I've now been married to her for almost 35 years. A few weeks from now, it'll be 35 years, and she's sitting in the back there. So, and when you're in Peace Corps, you work with poor people, and I got very used to, and you live poor too. They give you a very meager allowance to live on, and so I got accustomed to living that way next. And after I got my PhD degree at Loma Linda University, we returned to Trinidad and Tobago, and I taught in the Adventist college there for 9 years, and also in a state university there, and we raised our son there. So it's been a real privilege to be able to work for the Adventist church and to help train young people next. So when I take students on these trips, we like to experience God's creation next. And it gives us a foretaste of what heaven's going to be like next. So we get to see a lot of beautiful creatures. The coral reefs on the planet are gradually disappearing, unfortunately. They're dying off next. So there's a lot of beautiful things that we could see there next. Next. Here's a student with her lucky stars. Next. I've even taken students shark diving on several occasions, and we all have our hands and feet and heads and everything intact. Next. Here we are jumping in the Amazon River where there's piranhas, but nothing bothered us. Next. Here we are swimming with pink river dolphins in the Amazon River. Pretty cool experience, something you don't do every day. Next. Going on a hike in the Amazon rainforest. Again, that's starting to disappear too. Next. Beautiful birds, scarlet macaw. Next. Here's a student making friends with a friendly toucan. This was somebody's pet. Next. Cool animals, white-throated sloth. Next. White-fronted capuchins, a family of them. Next. At nighttime in the Amazon, I've taken them catching caimans. It's kind of fun for students catching their first caiman. We shine a light in their eyes, but we have to catch only the little ones. Big ones, no. And luckily their mother never came and attacked us. Next. In Africa, in Kenya, we take them on safari for a couple of days. Next. We reward them for their hard work by having some fun with them. So we get to see all the iconic animals in Africa, and I was 56 years old the first time I went to Kenya. Next. And as a wildlife biologist, I always wanted to see these things. Next. And when I saw these for the first time, I basically cried. I was just so happy, something I always wanted to do. Next. And as beautiful as it is, and as much as it reminds me of what heaven's going to be like. Next. Here the wildebeest migrating. Next. It's not that peaceful over there. You got a lot of these guys prowling around, especially at nighttime. There's a lot of violence. Next. And so when we go to heaven, it's going to be better. Next. Not only will we see beautiful animals in heaven. Next. Oh, there was one more photo I wanted to have in there, but I don't have it. Next. Yeah, I have an image I took of a wonderful painting of a lion with up in heaven with people, and I used it in a different talk, but I got to throw that one in there. But anyway, yeah, heaven's going to be better because we'll all live together in peace, right? So remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Next. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, For God loves a cheerful giver. Next. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Next. So I want to challenge all of you to find some way in which you can help somebody. You don't have to be rich to help somebody by giving them money. You don't have to have a high education in order to serve in some specialized way. You don't have to travel halfway around the world. Okay, we just went through a pandemic, and a lot of people have been suffering. I actually had a few students tell me that they thought about committing suicide. Some of us struggle more than others. And there's always people in need across the street, in our own homes, here in church. This particular lady I think of when I think of service, I'm a member of the St. Helena Spanish Church, and she's always cooking for the potlucks that we have. And she spends an enormous amount of time cooking and serving as well. And I really admire that. Next. So, I would like us to collect a free will offering for a student. There's a student named Luis Casillas. He's there. Some of these students have been going around with me to different churches, and some of them did not raise enough money to go on a mission trip. And this particular student wanted to come here today, but he couldn't be here because he's already involved in homeless ministries in Napa. So I promised him I would ask for a donation to help him raise money. He got about half the money he needed, and he said he just didn't have enough to pay, so he really wants to go on a mission trip. So I'm going to ask for a offering if anybody's willing to provide for him for his mission trip. Next. And also, if anybody would like to make a donation online, that could be done. From what I've been told, donations are tax deductible as long as they're not for one specific individual. So, thank you.